This is the Knowledge Graph Insights podcast, episode number 19. The AI pendulum has been swinging back and forth for many decades. Juan Sequeda argues that we're now at a point in the advancement of AI technology where businesses can fully reap its long-promised benefits. The key is a semantic understanding of your business, captured in a knowledge graph. Juan sees large language models as a critical enabler of this capability, in particular, the ability of LLMs to accelerate the acquisition and use of valuable business knowledge.
Welcome to the Knowledge Graph Insights podcast, where experts on knowledge graphs and the semantic web share their wisdom with the digital and business communities. Our mission is to demystify and democratize knowledge graph technology and practices to make the benefits of knowledge graphs and semantic technology accessible to all. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 19 of the Knowledge Graph Insights podcast. I am really delighted today to welcome to the show Juan Sequeda. Juan is the principal scientist and the head of the AI lab at data.world. He's also the co-host of the really good popular podcast, Catalog and Cocktails. So welcome, Juan. Tell the folks a little bit more about what you're up to these days.
Hey, Larry, great. Thank you for so much for having me. Great to chat with you. So what am I up to now these days? Obviously knowledge graphs is something that is just my entire life of I've been doing since it's before called knowledge graphs. I would say that the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, I'd say is been understanding the relationship between knowledge graphs and LLMs. If people have been following our work, what we've been doing a lot has been on understanding how to use knowledge graphs to increase the accuracy for chat with your data system. So be able to do question answering over your structured SQL databases and how knowledge graphs increase the accuracy of that. And so you can chat about that. But what I'm interested more next now is, I'll call this, how do we extract knowledge from people's heads? And this isn't new. This is not new. This is back from the 80s and early 90s, all the work on knowledge acquisition. Being able to go, people wanted to create rule-based systems and expert systems, and you to have knowledge engineers who are go talk to the domain experts to be able to extract their knowledge and codify that. Well, that was hard, and it was brittle, and it was not scalable. And now we have a very fantastic tool called LLMs that I'm very excited to use them to be able to kind of find ways to kind of scale that back. So I think what's old is new, and I think the opportunities to kind of bring use these new tools to kind of do the work that we've wanted to go do, but we haven't been able to go do, and which is just to improve knowledge management. And one of the reasons why I argue that we kind of still try to solve the same problems. We're solving the same problems today that we had 30 years ago, but the core problems continue to be there. And I think it's this lack of knowledge. Now we have a way to kind of scale this out so people can stop complaining, saying, "Oh, it's just too hard, too expensive." So that's my long-winded answer of what I'm up to. And
Yeah, well, I'd love to jump right into that because that's, there's all these intersecting things, at least in my world. I run in a lot of different worlds, the content world and knowledge management folks. And anyhow, there's like you said, there's this longstanding in the AI world, there's this longstanding, the expert systems and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the knowledge engineers and kind of enterprise knowledge management stuff. And now, but it's always been like really hard work. But parts of that are now more amenable to if not automation, at least acceleration. And can you talk a little bit about how LLMs have kind of advanced the stuff you've always been doing and always wanted to do more of?
well, so LLMs, first of all, we look at the LLMs, and I like to look at things like as inputs and outputs, right? So the input is a prompt, and the output is going to be some text surrounded stuff, right? That's the super high level. But what it's been fantastic is that if you give it really contextual, some context as the input, right? And part of that context, you also give it a task of what you want it to go do. The output that comes out actually aligns very nicely to it. Now, yes, there's hallucinations and stuff, but look, it gets 80%, 90% done. Like that's better than nothing, right? It's better than actually doing things completely manual. And guess what? If a human does it, they're not always getting things 100% correct anyways, right? So that's at a super high level. And so the example I give all the time is organizations always complain. how many customers do we have? Oh, we have so many different customers. It's so complicated. Like, okay, so what? You're just going to cross your hands and just live like that? Like, no, how about you figure out at least how many different ones are there, right? And what are the implications of those things? But how would you do that? Well, you need to go start talking to people. Okay. And then somebody needs to go talk to all these people and start cataloging and kind of combining all this stuff. Well, what if I actually just pose that question to somebody saying, can you describe what is a customer for you in a sentence or in 10 seconds, in 15 seconds, right? Give me a minute rant of what is a customer for you. Like, just take that and you got a transcript, you got text right there. And so now I'm like, I could prompt the LLM to say, hey, here's this definition of a customer. Can you please give some definitions, or just here's where the prompting, this is where the interesting experiments are going to come in. And then you can now do that for so many different other people. And then you can do further analysis to figure out saying, hey, where are the overlaps of this stuff? Actually, you know what? Can you codify this? Can you turn this into code? Can you turn this into already some sort of a knowledge graph? And then I can now start comparing these things and like realize, oh, look, there's really X different definitions of this, where the alignment is on 80% and the 20% is this. And like, now we know these things. Now I can actually go back to use, like, that's the type of stuff that we can actually go do very quickly. And the initial experiments that I've been doing is like, this stuff is working so freaking well. Like, I wish we had this back 20, 30 years ago, right? But now it's time to go look at the problems that we're trying to go solve there, but back then, and like now we can actually solve them with these new tools. So that's what I'm really excited about. And this is something that I really hope we one, I want to show that this can be done. But second, but most importantly, is the so what? Once we've done this, like, what is the value for an organization, right? So I think those are the ties that we need to go do. Still, it's like we all complain about we don't know what, the definition of a customer. Okay, so what is the problem for that? Like, what's the money that we're leaving on the table? Like, how much money are we losing by not having a complete definition of a customer? Now that we do have that, like, we need to be able to say, well, I do have that now. How is that improving? I think that's really important for the next step.
Wait, so we're a couple of years into this now. Where is the value emerging? Where are you've talked a lot about like the workflow and making knowledge graphs and capturing knowledge. But how does that percolate up to business value? Where are folks finding that payoff?
So you mean from knowledge graphs in general?
Yeah, well, just from this whole scheme you're describing, like the ability to accelerate understanding of knowledge, and like what you just described is like what I do. I've been doing content modeling for many years, and it's sort of very similar kind of work. And a lot of that back and forth, I've already seen it accelerated in my content modeling practice as well. And so the way you're talking about, I can see that. And then, so to me, it just means I can model faster. But then the ultimate business goal is like you get, you're doing things with that model more quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'd say that, look, the honest no BS is that we've been doing things with data, and even though as much as we complain, organizations are being successful. They're making money. They're growing, right? So you can argue it's like, this stuff is already working for me. Like, why do I need to go do more, right? So that's the first argument, which is a very valid. Now I think let's look at the 80-20 rule. Right? Let's say like, okay, yeah, you're be able to be efficient and operational efficiency, and you're able to go solve your things, but at an 80% level, right? And then there's that last 20%. And then the question is it worth to go figure out that last 20%? That last 20% is, for example, I have different definitions of customers. So when I go ask for things about customers, I get an answer back. Is that the correct answer? I don't know, but hey, my business is working, so maybe that 80% was enough, right? Let's be honest, something we need to acknowledge. So now the question around that the last 20% is something that we've really not been able to go tackle, because we just continue kind of living in the status quo of today, right? So we kind of live on making sure that current 80% today keeps working faster and efficiently and so forth, right? I mean, yeah, yes, the problems that we were complaining about 30 years ago, the same problem we're complaining about today, but we still have advanced on scalability. We have things in the cloud. We have things more secure, right? All that stuff has really made things more important. So, but what I believe is that last 20% is what I call the investment in semantics and knowledge. And my hypothesis is that last 20% has always been expensive and hard. That's why you have not untapped it. But the moment that we do untap that, I believe that we're going to have a little bit more bit of competitive edge. We're going to know better our customers because it's not just one generic thing where, oh, so now if I know things better, like I can make smarter, better decisions around that stuff. So my hypothesis here that if you untap that last mile, that 20%, we're going to be able to we're going to be able to go do things that we were not able to do before. And I suspect that that's going to help us grow more. Now, organizations who are kind of in their old ways, they're going to be slow and clunky to start. And you're going to have younger companies who are going to who are AI native, who are starting kind of from a clean slate. They're going to be able to get to that 100% faster. And hey, they're maybe going to come up and catch up, right? So I think that at the end of the day, my hypothesis and my position here is that investing in semantics and knowledge enables us to reuse data. And reusing of data means that we're going to be able to go make sure that 1 + 1 is greater than 2. That's the big thing right there. I think that is the economical argument that we need to go do. Anyways, let me throw it back to you.
Yeah, well, no, that's one thing. I still haven't sorted out my audience for this podcast yet. And I think some of this is going to be onboarding people who are new to the world of the semantic web and semantic practice in general and ontology design and engineering and all these practices. When you talk about how semantics might take us that last mile or the last 20%, talk about a little bit about the what you're getting with that semantic, better understanding of the meaning. Like you've used the example of the classic one, customers. Like, what do you even mean by that? How can clarifying, for example, your notion of what a customer is, take you a little further down the road in terms of business results?
Yeah. So I like to, let's talk about what I call this a shift from the data first world to like a knowledge first world. And the example I always give is I give you a table, and the table has a column name, right? Has a column name and has an integer. The column name is length, and the values over there, you have a bunch of values underneath, right? That's an integer. And then next to it, it has another column name called unit. Okay, so that's all you have right there. Okay, what do you know? Well, that's a number. It's a natural number, right? And length must be measuring something, right? Okay, that's data right there. Knowledge and adding all that context is to know, like, oh, that length is actually the height of a warehouse. And by the way, all warehouses have height. So if you have a null value there, that is an obviously error because all warehouses have height. So that value must exist. If we just don't know where it is, we should go figure out what that is, right? More knowledge is that, hey, the height of a warehouse is always between 15 feet and 50 feet. So if you see a number there called 99, that is definitely a wrong value in there, right? So, and then you can like add more. By the way, this is those semantics. These are all meaning. This is providing meanings. But now let's add more context and business context around that. So what is the value of having the correct data about heights of a warehouse? So think about this as if you have a warehouse, you're selling storage space, right? So what happens if I have the incorrect storage space? If let's say my warehouse, if I say it's 40 feet, but it was actually 50 feet, oh, I have empty space. I could have sold more space. So I'm leaving money on the table. But what if I said it was 50 feet, but it's actually 40 feet and I sold all that space? Oh, well, I don't have a place to go put all these packages that I'm expecting right now. So I'm going to be losing money on this stuff, right? So every time you start increasing more of that semantics, adding that meaning and in that context, that context is connected more to the business side, which makes it connected more to, at the end of the day, we live in a capitalist world. So how am I making more money and saving more money around that stuff? Now, everything I just said is already happening today. And my point is that we're doing this in, the cliche is like cliche words. It's not first-class citizen, right? We're doing all this work, all that knowledge work is already happening. It is embedded in people's heads. It is embedded in a dashboard report. It is embedded in code. It's embedded in transformation and ETL pipelines and all that stuff. And then I think that's what I call that 80%. People are doing it. I'm like, look, I think if we start treating that knowledge, that context, that semantics with the respect it deserves, that is going to make us more efficient in so many places, right? One, we now know what the rules are because we can say, hey, those rules changed because of regulations, whatever, so we need to update that, right? We now can onboard employees faster to tell them, look, you're managing these warehouses. Like now we know why it's so important to keep the data quality of it so high, or so important, right? We're Employees are leaving organizations. We want to be able to, if they're off board, I want to be able to extract that knowledge from them because that other knowledge people are going to be using. And where am I going to go stick that and connect that? So I think all of this at the end of the day is really to take an organization to the next level of what I think what it really should be doing. Like we should really, your data and the knowledge is really that brain of your organization. And I think the vision here is that you want to be able, if your company, you want it to be acquired, you want that company to survive the test of time, to be around for the next decades, centuries. Like you want that knowledge to be in a place where it can evolve and people can continue building upon it to make it better and expand on it. And I think you'll be able to do that faster and grow your company better. I mean, that's what organizations are, right? So I think we are doing it today, and I just like we can be more efficient and better at it. And that's my point.
Yeah, and as you're talking about that, I'm reminded. I'm thinking back because I know you're about as deeply enmeshed in the old semantic web and the original knowledge work stuff. I was thinking just now, for example, of Doug Engelbart and his notion that all of this work we do should augment human intelligence and human effort, and everything you just described is like things that he was talking about in like 1965 or whatever, and we're just now getting to it. Is that, I guess, as somebody who's been around this a while, is that galling or is it encouraging that it's finally happening?
Well, I if I zoom in, I obviously get frustrated. I'm like, but why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Right. So, but then if I zoom out, I realize, look, first of all, change is hard always, right? That's one thing to acknowledge. Second is that the pendulums come and go, right? So we were trying to go do like this conversation we're having right now, but talking about knowledge. Like people were doing this. This was the topic in the '80s of doing expert systems. I mean, if you think about what the Japanese were doing in the '80s, the Japanese Generation Project was about creating these AI machines based on Prolog and having parallel hardware to go do this stuff. Like they were trying to do that in the '80s. Like now we're kind of doing this, coming back to it also in a newer manner. And I think people are now realizing, well, it's not just one or the other. We should find a hybrid around that stuff. But we needed to start from one side of the pendulum, move to the other side of the pendulum and figure out, okay, we probably need the best of both worlds, but we actually figure out what the best of both worlds are is because we've been to each side of the pendulums, right? So, I mean, this is why, we just need to, as humanity, learn these things, right? And it is frustrating, at least for me, because I'm like, I've been seeing all these things, right? I'm connecting all these dots, but I'm like realizing other people are not connecting it. It's like, well, because we need the pendulum to swing on one side and for the pendulum to swing on one side, you need people focused on that side of their bubble in a way, right? And then when the pendulum goes back and forth, and then we'll see more of these dots connected. I think that's now starting to happen. And if we look at it, just progress in this area, 50 years, 60 years is not that much time either, right? So we also have to have, I have faith in humanity. Things will come in and we'll have smarter people always to kind of push things forward. So I think that's what's happening right now.
Yeah. And that faith, as you were talking about that, one of the things that occurred to me as you were just talking, I haven't embarrassed to say I haven't thought about this before, but like so much of that stuff in the '80s was about like manufacturing and industrial applications of computing power. Whereas now we're in this like almost 100% knowledge or like largely knowledge-based cognitive economy. You think that shift, you like kind of prepares us better to take advantage of, because it's a lot of this is like, from what you've said, a lot of this has kind of been known, but is it better or easier or more viable and feasible to apply it in the current era?
Well, I say, yeah, as time evolves with new technology, the different problems become easier, and then we have new problems around all the time. So I think, we have. That's what I'm saying. Like now we actually have, now I can use these LLMs to help me go do some knowledge acquisition work, which was something which was really incredibly hard to go do. It was completely unscalable. manual, 20, 30 years ago. And now we can figure out how to go do this in a scalable way. And guess what? That's going to lead to new problems, which we don't even know what they are. So, I mean,
You remind me too that you do so much research in this area. For example, like the research that you and Dean did around improved question answering against relational databases with knowledge. That was like a number of people observed that was like the longest paper title ever. But I think it was necessary to convey that. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe do some of the lessons from that research apply in what you were just talking about?
Yeah. So when we look at how large language models, ChatGPT came out, like obviously everybody's super excited about it. And from a data perspective, and specifically from a structured data from databases, relational databases, people are like, oh, I can now do text to SQL. And then a big reminder is that doing question answering over structured data, text to SQL, is something that people have been working on for over 30 years. So this isn't a new thing either. Now, suddenly everybody's like, whoa, I can just prompt this, it'll generate SQL. And then, you give it a very simple example, a very simple question, it worked pretty well. So a cute question with cute data, cute schema, that works pretty well. And then people were trying to go write up all that stuff and getting excited. I'm like, okay, hold on. Let's calm ourselves down and let's go figure out what really is the state around it. So the first question that we asked ourselves was, to what extent can these LLMs actually provide accurate answers over relational database, over enterprise relational databases? Because all the experiments and people writing blogs about this stuff are just about get cute examples, cute data and stuff like that. So to what extent it was. Now, our hypothesis was this is not going to be accurate at all because it's like, it doesn't even know what this stuff means, right? So it needs extra context. It needs that meaning. It needs that semantics. And then again, we're like, oh, our hypothesis here is that if you have a knowledge graph representation of your relational database, it is going to return more accurate results than if you don't have that. Now, an initial, not even experiment, like initial test that we did was, do these LLMs, in particular, we're looking at ChatGPT at the beginning, like, does it actually know these semantic web standards of ontologies of OWL, RDF, and Sparkle? I was very hesitant. And then I started playing around with this. So I played around with it, playing around with Brian, Jacob also played around with this. And we're like, oh God, this stuff knows it. Like, it's writing all these, it knows all the syntax, generating everything correctly. I'm like, what the heck? And then I remember giving it like, hey, the first prompt, here is an OWL ontology, copy and paste it, write a Sparkle query for the following question. And I just did a bunch of like just samples like this. I'm like, it was just coming out correct all the time. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, okay, so this was kind of like, okay, now this thing is starting to work. Let's go test this out. So that's kind of like the premise of how it all started. And then also we were talking to a lot of the folks at the cloud vendors like Snowflake and stuff, and they're starting to put all of these things out of like, oh, LLMs, and they're acknowledging that they need to go do some semantics and stuff, but they didn't know what that looked like and actually how much would it actually improve. So that basically was like, well, we got all these unknowns, right? All these open questions, and we formulated the research question is, to what extent can knowledge graphs increase the accuracy of LLM question answering? So we wanted to know the extent. It's like, if I start from 0 and my goal is 100, if I don't use knowledge graphs, where do I go? If I use knowledge graphs, how much does that improve? So that's kind of the question. And then the framework to go figure this out was, we created a benchmark. We looked at an enterprise domain of insurance, enterprise schema in the insurance domain. We broke down questions into different quadrants, which was important. It's not just a laundry list of questions. And then, so we did all the experiments, and that's kind of where we started to see the results from that. And then, I mean, the results from that work was like 3 times more accurate with very basic prompting. That was the whole thing. We wanted to eliminate as many variables as possible. So it was the simplest prompt ever. Basically, here is your SQL schema, copy and paste, write a SQL query for the following question. Here is your OWL ontology, copy and paste, write a Sparkle query for the following question. That was it. And that's just with that basic prompt was that. And what was really cool is that this resonated with so many people, and other vendors were starting to replicate the work. And I think obviously the vendors and the people in the space who are like very pro semantics, they're like, hey, look at this. We now have evidence around that. So, I mean, I know for a fact that at all the large tech companies, our paper has been circulated to everybody around these things. And because it's like people who've been trying to make the case for semantics, said, okay, here is a paper that gives us quantifiable evidence of why we should go invest in it.
Yeah. Was that the first? I mean, that's more than a year ago now, right?
Yeah, that was actually year and 3 months. So we published the paper. We put the paper online in November of 2023. And but we actually started to kind of talk about the initial results, I think in September. So actually we decided to start doing the work after the Snowflake Summit in June 2023. And then we started doing the work. We started getting our first results after setting everything up around September. I think I gave a first talk around this at the Turing Institute in London back then, and then just that's the work that came out. And then we did some subsequent work of how to like further increase the accuracy by now leveraging the ontologies, and that got it more to 4 times more accurate. Point is, invest in semantics, invest in knowledge graphs for all this. And now you see that right now with GraphRag is a reason people are using GraphRag, and the whole knowledge, the GraphRag manifesto from Neo4j cites our work of like, hey, GraphRag is better than just only vector databases because we have the evidence that knowledge graphs improve the accuracy. That's just one of the reasons. So it's great to now see that how it's been a catalyst to people to say, yeah, we should start investing in semantics and knowledge.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the relationship between the arrival of GraphRag and your work. Do you think that was related? Do you think I was?
Yeah, for sure. No, it was related. I mean, you can see GraphRag comes from Microsoft, and Neo4j start pushing this, and I mean, you could see all the talks that even Emil Efrem, from the CEO of Neo4j, talks about it and giving us somewhat of the credit of where it comes from. So yeah.
Nice. Well, and that comes right back to the original question that I wanted to get you on the show about is like how LLMs have accelerated all this. And you've given, just tons of examples. Well, one other thing about your research, you intended that to be like benchmarked and benchmarkable. Has it become sort of the standard by which people are measuring this?
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. And I think the reason why it hasn't specifically for the question answer is because there continues to be the very large benchmark systems like Bird or Spider, where they automatically test all these systems. They go do, and that has become the de facto one. So when anybody's doing like text to SQL, they just continue to use those things. All those systems over there, what they do, from what I can perceive, and if I'm getting this wrong, I would appreciate people to kind of call me out on it. Is they end up being like training a lot of these models to go understand what those benchmarks are. And the point in our experiments was like, you had to invest in the semantics. Like there was work that needed to be done. It was not fully automated. Right. So once I invested in that semantics, you should go do this. Like now the accuracy is going to now increase. So it really is kind of a driver to go for the enterprise to go do all that core metadata catalog work to go that happens. And I think what I'm seeing when I talk to people, they hit that barrier. Like, yeah, you're doing all this stuff without the semantics, and you're getting to you're getting increasing, but you're hitting a wall. Like, yeah, just you need to start treating your semantics as a first-class citizen, and you aren't. And that people realize that, right? Now in the paper, the work, we were very specific on knowledge graphs and RDF, and how, like, at the end, do whatever you want, but just treat it as a first-class citizen. Don't just embed that semantics in some code or in the prompt or whatever. Like, treat it as a first-class citizen, because at the end of the day, if you don't, you're just going to be living in eternal POC land. And yeah, I guess cool. You created a great POC, but you want this to have an impact in your organization, you need to treat it as a first-class citizen.
Yep. And that, so that part of your hypothesis, I guess, is borne out that like, just add semantics and you'll get better results. And is that taking off? Like all the vendors like at Semantics and Connect the Data London, they all seem pretty busy. Is this world taking off a little bit?
I would say so, and I hope so, and I think there's a lot more to be done around this stuff. I think, but again, remember invest in the semantics. But now the question is, how costly is that investment? Which goes back to my initial point. It's like, I need to reduce that cost of that investment. Therefore, now the next problem I'm tackling on is like, how do we make sure that we can now scale this out, make that cheaper, faster? That's the next work that I'm doing.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait to see what the future holds. Hey, Juan, I can't believe it. We're coming up close to time. But before we wrap up, is there anything last, anything you want to revisit from the conversation or just make sure we share before we wrap up?
Well, I think the main thing I want folks to think about today listening is it is time to invest in semantics and knowledge. And I want you to realize that you are already doing it. In every single conversation that you're having with people, you're talking about things, right? In every single code that your data engineers are writing, pipelines, you are codifying that. In every single dashboard that you're creating, somewhere you're embedding the meaning of those things. So you are already making that investment. Now, I think what is important is that to realize like we should start treating all of that work with more organization, with more respect. It deserves more respect. This is basically the meaning of of our business. So let's acknowledge first that we're already doing that work, and it's hard work. And the thing is that it's being spread around, and nobody has kind of like the mandate to kind of manage that. And I think we just need to start realizing what we're already doing that work. It's hard work. It's important work. Let's start organizing that and figure out where it happens. I think. Where does that happen? I don't know. I mean, every organization is different. I mean, is it a new role that we need to go do? Maybe if you look at the data engineers, there's all this technical work that happens by data engineers. There's all this kind of social people work that's happening. We probably need to go separate that type of work, right? Does that fall into like a new role? Is that like what I call the knowledge engineer, the knowledge scientist, or is this work that should be done under data governance, data stewardship? This is what we need to go figure out. I think all that work is kind of being spread around. So my takeaway is this is the time to start in figuring out how to go invest in semantic knowledge if we want to really go scale this out. And otherwise, we'll just live in eternal POC land.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a reason for more hope that we can get out of POC land and actually ensconce some of this knowledge in systems. But like you said, there's still some details to be worked out there exactly where and how that happens. Hey, one very last thing, Juan. If people want to connect or follow you online, what's the best place to find you?
Find me on LinkedIn. That's easy. Just go follow me on LinkedIn and just shoot me an email too if you want. I'm Juan, Juan, at data.world. That's it.
Cool.
And also follow our podcast. That's what I need.
Yeah, and so to include links to that, I got to say the cataloging cocktails is awesome. I listen to every episode and I always enjoy it. The recent episode with Ethan Malik really grabbed me. Anyhow, it's fantastic. So I'll include notes to all that stuff in the show notes as well. Well, thanks so much, listener. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for having me.
For show notes and to sign up for our newsletter, visit our website at knowledgegraphinsights.com. And please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for listening.